an exclusive interview with NewsX, Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to our editor-in-chief, Rishabh Gulati. During this no-holds-barred interview, Prime Minister Modi has reiterated that the Congress will give reservation even while allotting government contracts. He further said that the Congress's manifesto has imprints of the Muslim League, and he also raised statements made by the former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, where he said that Muslims and minorities must have the first right to the nation's wealth. The Prime Minister has explained this further on with an example what this could possibly mean for the future of the nation if religion-based reservation is granted. Let's quickly listen in to what the Prime Minister told NewsX before we take this conversation forward.
अब उनके मैनिफेस्टो में कहा गया है कि अब ठेके में भी आरक्षण होगा, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट सिस्टम में। मतलब कहीं ब्रिज बन रहा है तो ब्रिज किस आधार पर आज दिया जाता है? जो कंपनी लेना चाहती है उसमें रिसोर्सफुल है कि नहीं, एक्सपीरियंस है कि नहीं, कैपेबिलिटी है कि नहीं है, वे इस काम को समय पर करने की उनकी क्षमता है कि नहीं है, इन सब को देख करके उसको टेंडर मिलता है, तब जाके वो अब कहते हैं उसमें भी हम माइनॉरिटी को आरक्षण देंगे, मुसलमान को आरक्षण देंगे। ये सारी घटनाओं को एक साथ जोड़ करके देखें तो जब ये कहते हैं कि हम इनहेरिटेंस टैक्स लगाएंगे, मतलब जो भी संपत्ति लेगी तो संपत्ति पर अधिकार किसका होगा? जो मनमोहन सिंह जी कहा था उनका होगा। अगर ये सीधा सीधा पूरा कैनवास पर रखो तो इसका लॉजिक यही निकलता है, ये देश कैसे स्वीकार करेगा? दूसरा, क्या दुनिया के किसी डेवलपिंग कंट्री ने इस प्रकार का पागलपन किया है क्या?
All right, so there you heard it, what the Prime Minister said. I have with me Advocate R.K. Singh. We also have with us Professor D.K. Giri, Rajlakshmi Joshi and Major Mohammad Ali Shah joining us on the broadcast. Let me begin this conversation with Major Mohammad Ali Shah. Major Shah, the Prime Minister in an exclusive conversation with NewsX put forward an example where he said that think about a bridge that is being built or a road that is to be constructed today. The basis of granting the contract today has to be whether the company that is bidding has the capability, whether they have the equipment that they require, whether they have the experience that is needed to deliver something of that scale and magnitude to the government. So where exactly does reservation come in between this entire process? What do you make of the Prime Minister's comment?
Right, Devika, it's a very, very good question. Regarding reservation, I would say, supposing I want to be a doctor, I'll give you an example. And you have a reservation quota for me, irrespective from whichever region. If you have a seat reserved for me to be a doctor, if you come to me as a patient and I'm not competent, I've become a doctor based on reservation. Do you think I'll be able to cure you? Do you think I'll be able to cure anyone? Well, if there's a reservation, thankfully in the army, there is no SC, ST and such thing. There is no reservation. There are no quotas in the army. I'll give you an example. Supposing, God forbid, supposing there was, and I was incompetent, on reservation I would become an officer. I would get killed in action. I would get my men killed. If I'm incompetent as an engineer, as an architect, and if I am given a contract only based on reservation, तो वो पुल जो ब्रिज होगा वो मैं गिरा दूंगा. I will not be able to do a competent job on that. So when we talk on development, it should be purely on competency. How competent is a person? Now, the very fact is some people will say reservation is for example, in a relay field, when there is a relay, 4 into 100 meters relay or 16 to 100 meters relay, you run 100 meters and you pass a baton to somebody else. So you start with a fast runner, weak runner, and it keeps shifting. It's to get everyone on a level playing field, yes. If you want to get people on a level playing field, invest in the education. If the foundation is strong, you would not need reservation. If the base is strong. As Allama Iqbal, who wrote Sare Jahan Se Acha, he once said, खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रज़ा क्या है. So the very fact is we have to strengthen ourselves and not count on reservation that, okay, if just because my seats are reserved for me, I will have my way out. Be it in the IAS, be it anywhere. There are reservations, I know. Even in there are reservations everywhere for to get the weaker sections economically backward together on a level playing field. But if we invest in the education, if we strengthen them, if we make the base strong, we won't have to demand reservation thereafter. That's
Okay.
what I'm asking.
Advocate R.K. Singh, is the Prime Minister then urging everyone to move towards a conversation where you actually, as Major Mohammad Ali Shah also pointed out, that you should look at ensuring equitable distribution, you should look at ensuring equality in terms of education and platform, rather than 70 years later, we're back to saying that there is now a new community or a new religion in India that requires reservation?
Thank you, Devika, for inviting me. At the onset, Devika, I must bring to the notice of your viewers one thing. This entire debate of religion-based reservation is a non-state at the beginning itself. What we say in law, it's a futile debate. It is a diversionary debate because in the constitutional scheme of things, our constitution never mandate a religion-based reservation. Such kind of issues was also raised during the Constituent Assembly debate. Our forefathers, who were more learned, more experienced, they have seen the different seasons of life and times. They have deliberately and debated the entire scheme of religion as well qua reservation. And they have came to this conclusion that religion-based reservation cannot be sustained at any cost. I do not know why Prime Minister is saying all this thing. I do not find anything as such in Congress manifesto. But I must and I seize upon this opportunity to caution every citizen of this country to be aware of any such diversionary talks or political rhetoric by any segment of the politician. Because I am repeating it, that this country, since independence, has been debating the scope of reservation, and not once, but thrice. This debate has come to the parliament. Way back in 1970s, in Bihar, there was a commission which was called as Mungeri Lal Commission. It propounded that reservation should not always be distributed as charity, but the economic criteria should also be taken into consideration. Thereafter, the Mandal Commission recommendations came. That Mandal Commission recommendation in 1991 was implemented. Religion was never a basis. That commission's recommendation was challenged in Supreme Court by that judgment, I'm forgetting the name, Idrasmani judgment. That judgment also said specifically that economic criteria may call upon be criteria for reservation, but religion cannot be. So all those people who are wasting time on these things, they are wasting the precious time of this nation. This debate ideally should not have happened. By doing all this debate, what exactly we are doing is being a pawn in the hands of the politicians. And we must refrain from that. We must refrain from that. I must tell you with all confidence. Yes, please.
Okay, I want to bring in Professor D.K. Giri. Professor Giri, you've heard what the other panelists have also had to say. Firstly, what are your thoughts? And I'd just like to understand from you, if the opposition wants to raise the question of certain communities or certain religions in India that have perhaps not done as well as others, do you think today talking about or promising reservation is the way forward, or should the conversation have been about having certain other plans of action in place? Will we be able to move forward from a conversation on reservations in this country?
Well, reservation has become almost a pejorative term. I mean, we should call it affirmative action. You see, Aristotle once said, the father of political science, that if you treat unequal people equally, is in not justice. You see, so you need to create level playing fields, and in the United States, all over the world, there are affirmative actions for poor people. But let's go back to Major Shah made a point about perhaps he was alluding to compromising merit when it comes to reservation. There is no empirical evidence so far that any reservation based performance has lacked in merit. You know, one of the prime minister was operated by a person who got into medical services by reservation. Anyway, there are many examples. I think that's also a heresy. It is not based on facts. On your question whether it should be based on religion, no, certainly not. Our reservation policy initially was based on caste. Caste is not changeable category. Religion people can change. In freedom of religion, that is why the scheduled caste in the Christian community are facing this problem and agitating for reservation of scheduled caste. So religion cannot be basis of reservation, nor can it be a basis of nation building anywhere. Religion is something, as I said, it's not syncretic, it is very individual. Bangladesh and Pakistan fell apart on the basis of religion, although it was created initially on the basis of religion, but it could not sustain on that parameter. So that is not a criteria, but certainly new set of criteria should be invoked to give support to people who are left behind, marginalized and deprived. You see, so anybody saying that it should be based on religion, economic criteria, yes, and BJP has done it. Economically weaker sections, they have got 4% reservation already. So economy and caste, and incidentally, caste and class in our country also so far has been synonymous. That is why it is called, in the matter of OBC, it is called other backward classes, not caste. But when it comes to ST/SC, it is scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So economic criteria has been taken in OBC reservation as well. And BJP has created a new category on EWS. So I do not know what should be the criteria. Religion certainly not, but there should be a new set of parameters to give in favor of affirmative actions to people who are weak and marginalized.
Okay, Rajlakshmi Joshi, bring you into the conversation. When the Congress or the opposition, for that matter, say that Muslims in India are not doing as well compared to other communities, is that indicative of a failure of the past 10 years, or is that indicative of a failure of the past 75 years of India's history? The fact that in 7 decades, Muslims who have risen a lot in numbers are still economically, or as per the Congress, not doing as well and required today at this age and stage reservation, whose failure does that actually indicate?
That's a very interesting question, Devika. I always believe that simply giving a percentage of reservation is not going to solve matters at all. For example, see, I've always wondered why, everybody talks about SC, ST, they talk about it in combination. And, just giving a certain percentage of reservation for ST is not going to solve the issues of the ST, that is the scheduled tribes, which are much different from the issues of the scheduled castes. So, this I'm just stating as an example to you that, now the reason why PM Modi is getting so much support from the tribes, from the different tribals in different areas and in different states, is because he looked into all those issues. He has actually connected with them and he has tried to solve their issues on an individual basis. So that is the reason why that has been possible. So otherwise, you have had all these issues of Naxalism. You have had all this, there were a lot of opposition to from the tribes for all the development projects. So that, you have to bring them together, and at the same time, you have to keep them you have to be able to safeguard their own interests also. So, similarly for the rest of the, say, SCs or the OBCs or even for the Muslims, the problem was that, the previous government just looked at them as just give them a percentage of reservation and the whole thing is done. So you need to keep a certain section underprivileged so that you can use them as a vote bank. That was what was happening all this time. So I don't understand how giving an entire blanket ban to the entire Muslim community and calling them as a backward class, including them with the OBC, is helping their situation. So, there are certain castes within the Muslims also, which were included in the OBCs in the previous governments also. So nobody had a problem with that. But why this issue of reservation, especially for the Muslim community, has come up is because they started coming all this conversation about a blanket reservation for the entire Muslim community, and that is the problem. And it is not without any
Okay.
base that the PM is talking about reservation, and about how Mr. Rahul Gandhi is talking about reservation specifically for the Muslims. Because
Okay.
see, he has come out, they have brought out these videos in the past where Mr. Rahul Gandhi is demanding to know why Mr. Mulayam Singh had not given these reservations to the Muslims. So he was demanding to know why that reservation was not given to Muslims, as he was the CM for 3 terms. So he even mentioned very categorically that Mr. Manmohan Singh has said that the Muslims also need reservation. So, this thing about bringing in religion in this matter of reservation is something that the Congress has done in the past. It's just that, they have been doing this flip-flop, where they say something and then they go against it. So, and even this Mandal Commission, the Congress had opposed it.
Yes.
And it was with the support of the BJP, from the external support, that the Mandal Commission was being able to get implemented. So it is not as if the Congress has always been in the favor,
of the concept of reservations even, yes. Okay, Advocate Singh, I want to bring you back on the conversation and just want to understand from you. Would it in fact be feasible for the Congress party or the opposition, if they were to form a government, to bring in reservations for Muslims? What would it entail, the legality of it, as well as the parliamentary procedures for it? In the sense that, is this promise implementable and feasible? Yes, Advocate Singh.
Okay. Look, Devika, the scope of reservation has already been fixed. That is a non-negotiable.
Yes.
In Indra Swane's judgment, the Supreme Court has categorically said the cap of reservation will not go beyond 50%. So now that will need constitutional amendment. And in all full stream, I'm sure the Congress or the allies in both the houses of parliament, they are in near future not going to get such a grand mandate whereby they are going to amend the constitution to extend the mandate of constitutional reservation. So far as the states concerned, Bihar has given 75%, Tamil Nadu does for 70%, but that is also can be challenged. But in all these three things, there is one very important point we all are missing. I'm not into the politics involved in it. Certainly, as a lawyer, I do not have the political wisdom to understand the nitty-gritties of these politicians. But I must tell you one thing with surety, and that is, on one hand, the scope of government in wealth creation, so far as private concerns are mandated, it is decreasing. And the cry for reservation to retain the reservation is increasing. The government has no vacancies which is coming up. It is drying up. But those people who are reserved, they are harping on this illusion that the reservation should not be negotiated. So in my earnest view, it is the right time this country must renegotiate the scope of reservation with the changing situations which we are facing. Certainly, we have to see the global changing positions, what India is perceived as. So, looking to the past, standing in present, and having our back in the future will not solve the problem. Yes.
Okay. Then on that note, Major Mohammad Ali Shah, bringing you to the conversation, as Advocate Singh also pointed out, that this, if it were to be implemented, it would require constitutional changes. You would perhaps need to then knock once again the doors of the Supreme Court. This could be a very, very long legal battle as well to have the cap removed. It would be a major issue for India going ahead. The sort of vision that Indians have for ourselves versus a sort of vision that the opposition at this point in time is laying out for us. Keeping that in mind, and keeping in mind the fact that, like I said, this would be a very, very long-term promise if it were to ever be implemented in practice, in reality, a reservation for Muslims in the country. Is the opposition then simply using this as a tool for politics? And what do you then perceive are the dangers of making these sort of empty promises?
Right, Devika, that's a very intelligent question, and I totally concur with my panelists. So everyone, I think they all spoke sense in their own way, and everyone was right. And I see, especially Dhaneshwari Devi ji, I mean, she spoke a lot of sense also. At the same time, I would say that, see, the fact is, they would be, when we talk about taasub, discrimination, for example, against Muslims, I personally don't believe that there is discrimination against Muslims or against any particular. My personal belief is there will be discrimination. It's part of human nature and psychology. But who would the discrimination be against? Against the weaker sect. That's it, plain and simple. And it's a fact that Muslims today are not in a position, majority of them, to stand tall. Why? Because they lack education. Because they lack education, they do not get good jobs. Because they don't get good jobs, they don't have good financial status. Because they don't have good financial status, their standard of living would be little back. Yes, no doubt about that. Now, it's not just about Muslims, it's about anyone who's financially weak, who is not in a position to stand tall. That's what I believe in, and I think we have to give a level playing field, yes. But for me, the way forward would be totally education. I have never felt discriminated against because I feel I went to a good school, I was privileged. I went to a Premier B school like the IIM Calcutta, so I worked in a fine organization. I was part of the Indian Army, so not everyone has the privilege to do that. Now, if you want to do that, my way, that's my personal take, is reservations is not the answer only.
Right.
You have to give them a strong education. If they are well educated.
So on that note, Major Mohammad Ali Shah, if you're saying that education should have been the conversation rather than reservation, do you feel that somewhere the opposition maybe miscalculated what they should have promised, and they perhaps could have spoken about madrasa reform in India? Why is it that when we want to talk about upliftment of Muslims, we're not talking about reforming the thousands of madrasas and ensuring that in fact, equal education that is, presented both in government schools and private schools, because we have an important conversation going on in that regard as well, right? Where there are certain state governments that are trying to ensure that public education in India reaches a certain level, which it didn't for many, many decades. That private schools are becoming more and more popular, but they're also becoming more and more expensive, and that will further create the inequality that we talk about today. So, keeping that in mind, why is it that the opposition felt that promising reservations would be perhaps the best way to maybe get some heads to turn and maybe get some people listening, but nobody wants to talk about important issues such as madrasa reform?
Good one. Very, very good one. And I'm thankful to you for asking me this. You know, my father was the Vice Chancellor of the Aligarh Muslim University. When he was a Vice Chancellor, he inducted a new course called the Bridge Course. Now, what is the Bridge Course? Bridge Course is bridging the gap between the mainstream education and the madrasa education. यानी कि दीन की ही नहीं, पढ़ाई ही नहीं, दुनियादारी की भी पढ़ाई. यानी कि apart from Quran and Pak, they will also learn about maths, science, computers, English, things which you require in your day-to-day life. So most certainly, madrasa education needs reforms. It's a fact. Let's accept it. Now, what happened is there was also a lot of opposition from the Maulanas, because where a person educated in a madrasa will get some money later on after he passes out. When he gets dunya ki taaleem, he would be in a position to give their arms to other people. Now, why is it that people do not talk about the education which madrasas need to actually change? And one more thing, people have a wrong misconception, a wrong conception that madrasa means कि भाई आतंक की पढ़ाई हो रही है. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. Madrasas are not the hub of terror. Madrasa basically means a pathshala, a school, a place to educate yourself. That is the meaning of madrasa. उसमें पढ़ाई उर्दू की होती है, वो अलग बात रही. That's a different thing. So people perceive that anything written in Urdu वहाँ पे ऐसा गलत काम होएगा, but that is not the case. But I strongly feel that our madrasa children need to learn. हमारी मातृ भाषा तो हिंदी है, उर्दू है, पंजाबी, मराठी, whatever, right? पर रोजी की जबान तो अंग्रेजी है और कंप्यूटर है. And computers do not see that which religion you belong to. They see your capability. कंप्यूटर भाषा नहीं समझता कि आप कौन सी भाषा बोल रहे हैं, वो आपकी काबिलियत की भाषा समझता है. So most certainly, I honestly feel that they should be taught about technology, about the latest development, and we have to constantly change with time. We have to adapt. We cannot say that, oh, just in Prophet Muhammad's time, that used to happen then, so that is same tradition we are following. Yes, it's good to follow traditions, but we have to see what is going on today in today's world, because as Charles Darwin theory says, survival of the fittest. You have to adapt yourself to the surroundings. So most certainly, when you spoke madrasa education, I honestly believe that yes, we need certain reforms there. Devika.
Okay, Professor D.K. Giri, bringing you back into the conversation, do you feel that perhaps, like I said, if the opposition of the Congress had spoken about issues such as madrasa reform or issues such as empowerment of women of certain communities to take India forward, that perhaps would have been a better conversation in the sort of mind space that India is in today? Because it seems like we have two very radical narratives going on, where the BJP is talking about Vikas and the BJP says that we have really laid the roadmap for development, for self-employment, we're trying to push people away from the mindset that government jobs are the be-all and end-all. We want you to become entrepreneurs, take those risks so that we can provide some cushioning, you take those risks, and you further, one person can further generate employment for 5 people, versus Congress coming and saying that there are 10 lakh government jobs on the BJP, but we will give you 30 lakh government jobs, or talking about reservation once again. Do you think somewhere they missed the mark in terms of having a narrative as strong as the Bharatiya Janata Party in terms of the promises that one is making? I'm not saying whether either of them are being able to deliver on those promises, but just on the aspect of a war of narratives.
Well, your last point is the nub of the conversation, where you say whether they can deliver. You see, during election time, the assertions the parties make, you will have to discount it actually. Elections are fought anywhere in democracy on symbols, emotions and identity, not very substantive issues. I mean, it has spread to even developed democracy like United States and UK. So you have to discount what they say. BJP is making a claim to take POK back. You know, every inch of POK belongs to us. And the lawyer friend in the panel explained to us how difficult it is to change the contours of the reservation without an amendment. So I was wondering, I was very excited. If POK is annexed to India, as a patriot, I would be really very happy. But is that feasible? You know, is that feasible in near future? So it's almost an impossibility, but it should happen in some time. But BJP made a strong claim on that. So people do that during elections. And yes, the talks that people should have on development, empowerment, and consciousness raising, this should come during so-called peace time. Election is a political war time, really. So we'll have to give that to the politicians. But one more thing I want to say, Major was talking good things actually, but we all have our own backgrounds. I come from a village and a tribal village on the border of Jharkhand and Orissa. We have no electricity, we have no piped water, we have no roads to our village. And how can we think of computers or high tech when you have no access to the basics? So when we represent, we talk about India, we'll have to be also conscious of the existential realities and, then do the planning. Absolutely. There cannot be a single plan in our country. There have to be multiple levels of planning.
Right, absolutely. But even the point that you've raised, Professor D.K. Giri, when you talk about there not being access to basic facilities, even then that would certainly require perhaps not reservation for that particular village, but simply people with the political will to actually deliver the basic amenities. And that's the simple point that even the Prime Minister is trying to raise. Major Shah, last word to you, then we need to wrap up. 30 seconds, please.
Right. I totally agree with the professor, and he has a very practical and a very valid point. And I would again go back to what Professor Dhaneshwari Devi said. And she said that again we need we need a level playing field. And yes, and how do we get technology in remote areas? We get technology when there's a will, there's a way. Jahan cha hai, wahan raah hai, and that is where the focus should remain actually, of getting
Yes.
technology
And
to
that
be in the
exactly,
remote
and that's
area.
the point that we're also trying to raise here, that when we make certain empty promises during an election cycle, it does derail the entire nation's focus from conversations that we should be having, which is points that Professor D.K. Giri is raising, that his village continues to not have access to basic facilities. Rajlakshmi Joshi, 30 seconds, I need to wrap up.
Devika, yes, exactly. We need to be aware of who's making empty promises, because, this thing about giving reservations beyond whatever the 50% cap is will obviously require the constitution to be changed. And because the opposition is constantly talking about how the BJP is going to change the opposition, the Prime Minister obviously thinks that maybe then they are going to cut down from the reservation for the other castes, and that is how the Muslims are going to get the reservation. So this, I think, this thing about the only vision is about giving reservations. I think that is a very narrow way of thinking rather than a very progressive way of thinking. So I think that it should be like, there should be so many schools and so many colleges that one doesn't need a reservation at all. So I think that would be the ideal kind of a situation. So the hope should be that we should be able to build so many colleges. So that, I think that instead of increasing our resources, if we keep increasing the reservation, I think that is not the right way to development. It is only going to keep cutting down the reservation from some other people. So I think that is a very crucial point to think about, Devika.
Right, absolutely. I thank all of our panelists for joining us.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.